Here. All right, we are live for an RTD Q&A. Excited to be back and doing something a little bit different, doing more of a just an audio style approach. But I'm excited to have a returning guest, someone who I haven't connected with in quite some time, Mr. Louis Commersano from Smaulgd.com. Louis, how you doing, my friend?
Doing grand, Mike. How you doing?
I am excellent, man. I'm excited to have you back on the show and get a chance to check in with you. I follow you on Twitter, so I see you're very active in sharing your opinions on a variety of subject matter. So I'm like, let's reach out and connect and have him come to the audience and just share his thoughts, man. So I want to touch on the election side of things, man. So you've been very vocal and expressing your displeasure in this whole electoral process. So give us the framework, man. Are you surprised at we're at this current point, or is this was this to be expected, or what?
Well, I did expect there to be contention in that they were doing mail in voting for the first time. What I was unaware of was how a lot of the mail in voting legislation or pseudo legislation was passed, where they came up with the way that the mail in votes would be counted, which ones would be legitimate, how long they would allow them to come in, signature verifications, postmarked, those types of things. I didn't realize in many states were done outside of the legislative process. They were done via consent decree in the case of Georgia between the Secretary of State and the Democrat Party. In
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania, they were done via order of the governor and then verified by the Supreme Court. So there were constitutional issues that I was unaware of, um, irrespective of whether those way they handled the election, the mail-in ballots. I knew that there would be issues with mail-in ballots because mail-in ballots obviously have so many different places in the chain of custody where you can corrupt the ballot.
Right.
Everyone knows, everyone's had mail stolen from their mailbox, mail doesn't arrive. And in this case, in many instances, they sent out ballots and they sent ballots out to people. Some people didn't get their ballots, other people got more than one ballot. And then when you go to mail it back in, as I mentioned, it can get stolen. The post office can play games with it. And then when it gets to the ballot place, they have to open it, they have to match it. It is a very unwieldy process in which the chain of custody can easily or more easily be tampered with than when you have in-person voting. And the fact that they pushed mail-in voting because of COVID, and that was very interesting, is that Twitter and YouTube went on and on about how safe and secure mail-in voting would be
Yeah.
when we've never done it on the scale that we've had. And so I did expect there to be these issues with mail-in voting. What I didn't expect was after issues were discovered and even video purported evidence of sending people out in the middle of the night and then starting to count ballots again a couple hours later, finding ballots under tables. I thought that there would be at least coverage of that. And what appears to me now is there's just a very deep, I don't want to call it a conspiracy, but there seems to be at many levels in the media, on social media, within the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, that there's nothing to see here. Everything is fine. And in fact, don't even talk about it because if you do, for example, on YouTube, we're going to take the video down. And
Mm-hmm.
that I'm surprised at. I'm not, I guess I shouldn't be, but they've gone one step further and further and further. First, they started kicking off people off social media. Then they started banning people, started censoring, and then they started with labeling tweets and labeling videos. Like right now on YouTube, every video about the election says something about how the election's been called, the election's over, learn how mail-in voting is safe and secure.
Yeah.
Same type of thing on Facebook. There's certain links that you can send on Twitter, even by a direct message. They say, oh, that one's no good. I was suspended for posting that New York Post article on Hunter Biden,
Yeah.
which now all of a sudden is fair game to talk about. But back then, during the election, they didn't want you talking about Hunter Biden. So that I am surprised that in the United States we have this level, which could only be seen as Stalinist style or Maoist style, Chinese communist style censorship, to the point where the media decides, social media decides, and then elements of the government decide certain things you're just not allowed to talk about.
Yeah,
And that's not good.
not at
It
all.
has nothing to do with being for or against Donald Trump. I would think people would want to know if there's an allegation. First of all, they say it's not credible. We've seen the courts deny any of these cases on the basis of latches, which means you waited too long, which is ridiculous because that would mean anytime you wanted to sue in the Supreme Court, they say, well, you should have brought the suit when the unconstitutional law was passed. Don't bring it now. That would eliminate just about any constitutional challenge. Or they say, get out of here. It's racist because you're talking about Detroit.
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense. Or you have no standing, as the Supreme Court said. Well, that doesn't make any sense either. Texas brings a case saying that there is that their voters have been disenfranchised by what went on in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
mm-hmm.
It's a controversy between the states, which is one of the main reasons the Supreme Court exists. And they say, we can't hear that. You don't have standing. Mind your business what happens in those states. When clearly it's a national election, that's basically saying that those states can do whatever they want. They can push illegally their or fraudulently their candidate, and you're just going to have to live with those results in the elections, even though you've done your election pursuant to anti-fraud and you've done it in pursuant to constitutionally passed legislation, voter how elections will be handled.
Yeah. So amongst there's still a large support base for Donald Trump because everyone can recognize that something's not right here based upon all the evidence and videos and all that stuff. But yet you have the corporate world, you have mainstream media, you have the far left, the Democratic side, all those individuals, the globalists in a sense, trying to squash that or just basically silence any type of truth message from coming out. But yet there's still people out there that says that, be patient, just trust the plan. Trump has this right in where he wants it. Now William Barr is gone now, so the truth is about to come out. And so are you? What's your thoughts on that camp there? The people who say just trust the plan. This is a part of the plan. Trump has another 4 years coming. Just be patient, enjoy. All that type of stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of that's wishful thinking, but there are still the people, and the only reason I would think it's possible would be because I would expect all of the institutions, the courts, the states, the legislature to act in the way that when presented with evidence, they will hear evidence, weigh the evidence, and make their decisions based on the evidence. And if that's the case, then clearly Trump has a chance. However, when you have courts throwing out cases I mentioned on racism, standing, latches, they're basically saying we're not going to hear any evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then that creates a narrative. I keep hearing, well, Trump loses all of his cases. Yeah, because they won't hear the cases. They won't look at the evidence. And if there is a possibility, they still have time. What they're saying is that they're going to continue to have these subpoenas, and they're going to continue to review the Dominion voting machines. They're going to look at the voter rolls. They're going to check illegal aliens. They're going to check dead people. Remember the states that Trump lost in the swing states, he lost by very small margins. And it wouldn't take much to overturn it if they can actually do a full audit of the votes, which obviously they don't want to do. So it is possible that if they can get what I would just expect, the normal course of business type of treatment of their claims, that they might be able to prevail. However, the way I look at it so far, there is a concerted effort to basically have this assumption Biden's been the president-elect since election night.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you say that there's election fraud is totally unwarranted, without evidence, and it has to be shut down. And then you see Bill Barr saying, there was no evidence of systemic fraud. Now, here's an issue. That's actually true. Maybe there isn't evidence of systemic fraud,
mm-hmm.
but there probably is evidence of intensive fraud, not systemically, but targeted in perhaps just 5 or 6 cities: Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Wisconsin, and Georgia, which would give you Atlanta, which would give you Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. Those cities, if you count the vote. And also in those cities, apparently, many instances, many precincts have more votes than there are people.
Right.
And that would just be a red flag. And there's been a lot of statistical analysis basically saying how Trump was ahead. I think it was ahead 58-42% with 65-70% of the vote in Pennsylvania. And he somehow loses by, 51-49. So I would think that in a normal world where you didn't have this grand, I guess you have to call it a conspiracy, that's designed to basically shut down any analysis. Because I think if you have an analysis, there's more than a 50-50 chance that Trump could prevail. But I think the game is being played on the basis that you're not going to get that chance.
Yeah. Now, okay, as of now, the electoral process is the votes are cast and all that stuff like that. I hear there's some challenges out there in some states that are still have yet to officially certify the electoral votes or whatnot. But just assume we get those votes casted or whatever for Biden or Trump, and then we get to January 6th where it goes before the Congress or whatnot, and Mike Pence. There seems to be a lot of focus on Mike Pence now as him being the actual guy that will either derail the current Biden narrative or shake things up a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? Is there any chance that Mike Pence might flip-flop?
There's a number of things that can happen. Yeah. So right now we had yesterday, the Electoral College met. They sent in their electors. Biden wins. But in 6 swing states, the ones I mentioned, plus I think Nevada and New Mexico, so it would be Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico, they are also cast electors for Trump.
Yeah.
And they want to put them in. And then what can happen before Pence even looks at it is the Congress people can object, and then they have to have a debate on it. There's the possibility that the people in the Congress could, and it's not based on number of Congress people that would vote. It's based on the controlling congressional delegation. So, for example, in California, they would only get 1 vote. They wouldn't get their X number of Congress people to get to vote for Biden. So there's a possibility that could happen. But you just saw where Mitch McConnell came out and congratulated. So that's in the Senate. But that does indicate there are Republicans that are willing to say, look, this is over. Not interested in going that way. Now, apparently Pence can say, I don't buy all this. And then it goes into, uncharted legal territory. I just don't even see Pence doing that.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of these people, both Republicans and Democrats, they've benefited from the system. They're not going to attack the system. It's almost like Socrates, he knows he was unjustly charged, but he put to death. He could get broken out by his compatriots. And he says, no, the state gave me my livelihood. So I can't reject the state now that it's wrongfully put me to death.
Yeah.
And I think these people, many of them probably benefited from. They're either benefiting from Chinese deals. They've benefited from voter fraud in the past. They're all in the game together. They're all getting rich, and they don't need Trump in there upsetting the apple cart.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Mitch McConnell. He became a legend under Trump because before that, he was just the turtle. But then he became the guy who got all the Republican judges put through. And Lindsey Graham is now fist bumping Kamala Harris. They're kind of, it's somewhat the old thing where they say it's professional wrestling. And I think it's true. I think on the Republican side, you probably have a few, which you would call real mavericks, not John McCain style mavericks, people that are just there to represent their constituency. And I think the Democrats have some of those too. But then I think for the most, you have a political class. And you see this in business and law and banking. They go from the SEC to the bank, back to the law firm, back to the SEC, the justice. They all move in the same circles. It's all kind of like a Washington, New York, Silicon Valley. And you individuals, they mess up their lives when they go against what sustains them all. Yeah. And I think that's what happened to the Supreme Court too. Look, Kavanaugh, Barrett, they got kids. Kavanaugh's already tasted what it's like to be on the end of the mob attacking him. Barrett probably didn't want to have anything to do with it. They seem to just want to avoid the issue. And it seems everyone wants to avoid the issue and hope it'll go away. The only thing that they're not counting on is there are a number of Trump supporters, or large numbers, that are going to complain. But I think they're more afraid of what would happen if they somehow did something that would allow Trump to win, because the left appears to be far more violent and willing to use violence than the Trump supporters, the right wing does.
Yeah. Now,
And I
what's
think
the
that's probably why nothing's going to happen, unless I believe the only thing that's going to, Trump is not going to be able to get people to have courage and do anything. He's going to have to do something. And if he
like
does
what?
something, though,
What can he
well,
do? What can he
he
do?
could
Because
do
he
the,
hasn't he hasn't done anything as of yet that
well,
really showed me that he's really that guy that wants to make America great, other than just talking a good game.
well, you see, the thing is, it's a dual-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to make America great by undermining the entire constitutional system, by essentially instituting martial law and having, half the people arrested on the basis that they've committed treason and that they're Chinese spies, or they're working with the Communist Party. Those are types of things that you're not going to get buy-in from. Obviously, you're not going to get buy-in from Democrat voters, and you're going to get buy-in from some Republican voters and some independents. So he's in a difficult bind. Some might just say he's better off waiting for 2024. Others would say no, because then by then, the Democrats will have run through all types of programs that'll make it very hard to undo. So I think in the United States, it's very hard for a person to act in the presidential command and control mode, and actually just not just put out executive orders like the one he has about foreign interference in the election, but to actually take the recommendations. Some of them may be deemed unconstitutional, but take them anyway because he feels he has to save the republic. Now, in order for him to do something like that, he'd have to have buy-in from a good portion of the public. And I don't know if he has that, because of all the propaganda that's been out there that all he's doing is claiming he's sour grapes and he lost the election. And this would be seen by many as him trying to just not leave office when he lost fair and square. That's how it's going to be. Now, the only thing he could do there, which would, again, the only way Trump can actually effectuate this, he'd have to really go all out. He'd have to shut down Google, shut down Twitter, shut down the mainstream media, take control of the airwaves. I just don't know if the American public would go along with that. Now, in a way, under martial law, you don't have to go along with it. It just happens. Yeah. And he'd have to have a plan to end martial law. It's a major undertaking that he'd have to have already planned on what he was going to do if the election was stolen for him. And it doesn't appear that he has that plan in place, because all this Q stuff, trust the plan, I don't think he even thought about how Barr was going to go, who his replacement would be.
Yeah.
He fired the DNI guy, Krebs. I don't think that Trump has it all that together. I'm not blaming him for not having it all that together. That's a lot to put together. How you're going to run a Marshall Plan if you lose the election, and all the people in place. I don't think he has the deep state, as you might call it, support to do all that. He'd have to have generals lined up. I just don't think he has that support. He doesn't have media support. I mean, he tries to promote Newsmax and OANN. They don't have that kind of reach.
Right.
The big reach is in Twitter, Facebook, Google, and the mainstream media TV outlets. And he doesn't have that support. So again, he'd have to shut them down. Yeah. And then he'd have to convince the public that what he's doing is to make America great and that these people are all traitors. Then he sounds like it may be true, but it sounds like a big conspiracy theory, and it sounds like he just wants to stay as president.
Yeah, and right now
that's why I think it's a very tough. He's in a very hard bind. What he really needs is to get a fair hearing on his fraud claims,
which I wouldn't anticipate actually having something between now and January 20th that would lead us to have any hope that would be the case. And so, as of now, we're being set up for a Joe Biden presidency coming up, and then that's a whole nother world of going back to the whole globalist agenda, re-entering all those foreign agreements and TPPs and all types of stuff like that. And
Paris
so going that route now, what do you anticipate? And so somebody put a question out here, how can and will Joe Biden how would he save the economy, from Mr. Jeff McCarthy out here?
Well, Jeff, I don't think I come from the more free market school of economics. I don't believe that president should be saving the economy. In a sense, Trump is no different than any other recent president. I mean, he complained during Obama about the deficits, but once a president gets into power and he realizes, oh, I can put pressure on the Fed to print money, and that's what he did. What he did with Powell. He kept saying, "Why has he got interest rates?" And he kind of forced them to bring interest rates down to zero. And the argument is the whole world is doing it. This is the problem I have with the kind of like the anti-dollar and China's going to crush the dollar narrative because all central banks across the world are all engaged in this race to the bottom. They all have massive debt. China is no different. China actually runs on debt and it runs on dollar denominated debt. So I've never even understood that argument. But the ECB has got a bigger QE program than the USD. So once you get in, it's almost hard. The United States or president or treasury secretary can't say, well, we're going to run sound finances while the rest of the world is, in a sense, getting a leg up by printing money, buying assets, doing negative interest rates. So I don't think that, in a sense, Biden's going to have anything different other than probably adding to the deficit in ways by trying to do this Green New Deal, which I think would be a big disaster because one of the, I guess, real drivers of some economic growth was based on fossil fuels, was based on shale oil, based on those jobs that were created. But most of the jobs that have been created are on the basis of artificially creating demand, meaning that you give people money, they spend it. They spend it on Amazon, and it's in it. There's not an equilibrium on where that money goes. During the pandemic, the supposed COVID thing where everyone had to be locked down, well, that benefited inured to Amazon and the quote essential businesses, and it harmed all the small businesses. I don't see Biden fixing that at all. I think he wants to give probably bigger grants and subsidies to companies. They either exist now or will exist because it helped fund them. Remember, Obama did Solyndra, the solar
Yeah.
company that went under. I think Biden would do all that kind of stuff, create all types of subsidies for ridiculous companies that are all his buddies. And of course, China. I don't know if he's going to have Hunter Biden out there trolling for deals.
He's going to appoint Hunter as a part of his staff.
Yeah, so I actually view in the last 5 years there is no such thing as a real economy.
Yeah.
It's all based on government intervention. It used to be there was the real economy subject to government intervention. Now it's all run by the government and maybe some free market thing pops up here and there. But that's why when people say one day you'll see, and when the real economy takes over, they've controlled the real economy. They control everything in the economy. And that's why they have all these rules in place on how much money you can spend, where you can spend it.
Yeah. So
And
watch this. We got so under this Biden economy, it's going to be more of the same times 10 because all around us now they're going to use the lockdown, the health situation. Of course, yesterday was day one with the whole vaccine is now available for emergency authorization usage. And so, do you see how will the merger of the Treasury with Janet Yellen, if she's appointed officially and approved to be the Treasury Secretary, and Jerome Powell, how will that team work together? You think they're going to really open up the can of worms or what?
Well, I think there hasn't really been a hostile relationship between Treasury secretaries and the Fed in the longest time. When you have Janet Yellen, highly accommodative monetary policy, it's just going to be highly accommodative fiscal policy combined with whatever Powell wants to do. So they will spend. Oh, she's already said her goal. She said, had not. The Fed supposedly has this dual mandate, which is stable prices and full employment. Well, she's added now racial justice, racial equality, climate change, climate injustice. I don't know what the Fed has to do with any of that. But again, if they can direct dollars towards those issues, and that's a very broad way. I mean, I don't know what that means. You just direct them towards racial inequality, direct dollars towards climate injustice. Well, that could be putting money and buying the bonds of companies like Solyndra, and having the full Fed backing and Yeah, it's not going to be good. It's certainly headed in the wrong direction. The only thing I could say is that Trump didn't slow that direction. Um, he was before COVID. He was pushing for the Fed to be as loose as possible,
Yeah.
and now they're beyond. I mean, what was that thing they were doing before at the end of last year? The repos. Remember
Repo.
all
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was always a reason for the Fed to do something. And then with the stimulus, and I guarantee you we're going to get, and in a way, the United States, Mike, should. When you take away somebody's, and again, I am a free market person, but if the government takes your business away, it's a taking under eminent domain. They have to pay you. So I'm not against the government if they want to shut everyone down.
Mm-hmm.
Restaurants, they should pay them. That's not the same thing as when they just send checks to everybody, which I'm against, because that they haven't demonstrated that those people have lost anything when you just give everybody $1,000. But apparently, I don't know if you know this, in other countries, the amount of money that people get is phenomenally much greater. They're getting it monthly.
Yeah, like I saw some countries in the EU area, pretty much a lot of the European countries I saw, they were getting several thousand, and then Canada's getting 2,000 a month, and yeah.
And there's people in the United States up until the end of this year who are getting $600-700 a week federal subsidy for unemployment. You could be 18 years old and you work for 2 weeks at a restaurant, then the restaurant closed down. Those people are getting $600 a week federal.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money. I mean, that's above Bernie Sanders' minimum wage.
Very true. We got a question here from S400. He says, do you think Biden will let Fannie Mae go private and offer conservatorship?
I don't know what he's going to do with all these alpha. I don't think so. I think what he wants to do is, he's already said he wants to get rid of student loans. There is a part of the Democrat Party that wants to get rid of any debt that's owed by anybody that makes less than, $50,000. They want to have forgiveness of housing loans. What's the one, the loan that if you meet certain income requirements, you can get a housing loan? They probably want to get rid of those. I mean, there's people in the Democratic Party say eliminate rent. I think it was AOC or one of them. Eliminate mortgages, eliminate rent. Okay, so who knows how far he'll go with that kind of stuff? But they can always use government agencies or the Fed to buy up that debt, forgive that debt, put it in some company, just reset it off somewhere. And then I always say, well, what happens to the people who already paid their student loans? Do they get a refund? No, they're not going to get anything. Or you paid off your mortgage. So what? You were part of the 1% and you were able to pay it, but that you're going to hear that kind of stuff. That if you can pay, you paid your fair share, but people who didn't pay their fair share, they're entitled to the house too, and they're entitled to the free education, the free health care. I don't know. Biden, I don't think historically has not had those. I don't think he's had many views. His brain isn't that sharp anyway. Mm-hmm. But he's never been somebody who speaks in a way about economics that everything should be free. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to last very long anyway.
Yeah. So a lot of people I saw a post the other day. Someone asked the question, who do you think Kamala Harris's vice president is going to be?
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, I think it was set up from the beginning. Because you think about it, Hunter Biden apparently has been under investigation by the DOJ since February this year.
I want to say I saw something about Barr was aware of his whole little situation 2 years ago. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, now they say, well, maybe you should have said something. Apparently, you're not supposed to if someone's under investigation because it poisons the defendant. Mm-hmm. But that's not the point. The point is that they have ways of leaking this stuff, which they always do. But even though they didn't even have to leak it because the New York Post had received copies of the Hunter Biden laptop, which had all the incriminating evidence on it. Anyone could see it. And the media put a lid on it, and so did social media. They weren't going to discuss it. And that was clearly trying to hide things that might hurt Joe Biden. So they refused to let you talk about it. You couldn't email links. You couldn't DM links. I think you could email, but you couldn't DM them on Twitter. You couldn't post them. I got suspended for 2 days, and they had to take it down. I was like, okay. And then again, that's outrageous that you get suspended for posting a New York Times article, a New York Post article. But the reason they did that, in my opinion, is now that all of a sudden Biden gets supposedly elected, and now it's okay to talk about Hunter Biden because I think they want to get him out of the way because it's going to be pretty clear to people that he's incoherent because they kept him. Remember, he didn't campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And the few times he didn't make any sense what he was saying.
Yeah.
And this is a way of getting Kamala Harris in. And Kamala Harris wants to do all the radical stuff. And I think the people that were behind pushing to get Trump out, they didn't really want Biden. They figured Biden was more, acceptable to mainstream America than because Kamala Harris could never have gotten elected. She couldn't even get the nomination in the Democrat Party. She didn't get any votes. And remember, Tulsi Gabbard, who got like 3% of the vote, annihilated her in the one of the debates, and she kind of dropped out after that. So Kamala Harris is neither popular. She could never have gotten in other than riding the coattails of Biden. And Biden couldn't have gotten in if they actually covered the election fairly, meaning here's Joe Biden yelling at a bunch of parked cars. And here's Donald Trump talking about stuff in front of 70,000 people in Pennsylvania. They never showed that. And so I think this has been designed to get Kamala Harris in. And now, if they raise the Hunter Biden stuff, they say, oh, it got pretty bad for old slow Joe there. He might have to step down. And then Kamala Harris gets in. Nobody voted for her. And then she picks someone who knows who she picks.
So somebody mentioned in the chat here, they said Hillary, a.k.a. Hillary Clinton, or who was somebody else out here? What was it? John Kerry.
I both of them would be like payback because both of them lost.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're the future of the Democrat Party, so there'd be no reason to bring them in.
Mm-hmm.
They probably want to bring in one of their rising stars, but they could bring in anybody. It really doesn't matter. Unless the only reason they bring in somebody, one of the senior statesmen of their party, like Kerry or Hillary, would be if they wanted Kamala to step down and then let Kerry or Hillary be president, which you never know what deal Kamala may have made with them in order to become vice president or become president, whatever it is. One of the things, she attacked Joe Biden before Tulsi attacked her as being racist and he was a horrible human being. And then I remember at the next debate when they met, Joe went up there and goes, "Go light on me, babe," or something like that. And it looks like they made a deal. Like she would leave him alone, let him get the nomination, and he would pick her as vice president. Then the press would cover for Biden, Harris, and then once Biden got elected, they'll start attacking him. That's what I see happening. It's not a prediction. That's what has happened so far.
Yeah.
Whether that was a planned out in advance, or one can only look at the facts and say, did they plan in advance? I don't know. I have no proof of that, but you can take your theory and apply the facts to it.
Yeah. Now we had a couple more questions, and always we're streaming live with Louis Carmersano from Smaulgd.com. And so feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and I'll definitely throw them out there to you. So we got a couple questions here. And so Mr. Jeff mentions about where'd it go? It said, will they come for our guns first, or for what was the other? Where'd it go? 1 second. It says, will they come for our guns first, or our gold first, or our guns?
No one wants your gold. That's there's no point in it. The amount that it's worth is indescribably small compared to the amount of money that's out there, the amount of money they can just print up anyway. So the guns they want, and Biden has already said he would do something. I think what he wants is you have to pay, if you have any ARs, you have to pay a couple of $100, or you get fined $10,000 per AR and go to jail. So there will be Second Amendment challenges for sure. The gold stuff, that's of no interest to them. So I always hear the government's concerned about gold. They're not, because they have that under control. Yeah. The world is not interested in gold. And if the United States was so interested in gold, they're not going to go door to door and get it. All they have to do is print up $800 million and go out and buy some. There's gold mines in the United States that can confiscate that if they were to actually go to gold as a part of the reset. The reason they won't They don't want to be reliant on a gold supply. They'd
Mhm.
rather be reliant on something they can vent out of thin air, like Fed coin or whatever it is. There's no point in the government going back to gold, this type of government that just wants to control everything.
Yeah.
And there's certainly no point in banging your door down to take a couple of 10th ounce coins of American gold eagles. There's just no, that's, I don't even know why I would think. The only reason they would do that would be to humiliate you or to impoverish you. But there's other ways of doing that are a lot easier. All they have to do is they can go in your bank account and steal your money.
Yeah.
They don't need to send people to your door to, to take your gold coins or whatever you might have.
Yeah. Here's another question here. It says, ask him about how he feels about Klaus Schwab's quote, "You'll be happy and own nothing," in regards
Yeah,
to
I
that
saw
whole
that.
great
Well,
reset.
that is the thing, that, and that's not a religious statement, and that's not a on the basis that you'll be more fulfilled. That's on a basis of what's the old expression? You'll get nothing and like it. They're basically saying that it's the whole globalist thing where we have limited resources, and if we all get together and use those resources properly, there's plenty for everyone. You can go live in your 200 square foot apartment. Anytime you need something, there's always going to be something available for the community, and if there isn't, you'll get a universal basic income. And basically, the people that run that whole get up or set up, they can live however they want. They can fly around. They don't have to worry about global warming because it's only going to be a few hundred jets flying them around. And they can do whatever they want. They can have all the wealth and you'll be happy. And the key there is convincing people that they need to do that, that it's good for the economy, it's good for the environment, it's good for them, it's good for their soul. That's what the propaganda is, that they
Yeah.
know best. But then what they do is they make you think that you came up with it and you've adopted it. See, well, that's what people don't realize. A lot of these things, they get people to chant and to repeat their propaganda. So it's
Mhm.
not like them telling you. They may come up with a statement like that, you'll have nothing and like it, but they'll start to get people to because if you repeat it enough, it's not necessarily that it becomes true. It's just that people want to believe it, and then they think that that's the way things are. And yeah, they look around, they say, "I don't need all this stuff," and not realizing that's your decision to make. You don't need all this
Yeah.
stuff. It is true. People have stuff. They have storage units that they don't need. That's up to you to decide. You don't need that stuff, and when you're going to do with it, whether you're going to sell it, give it to your kids, whatever. It's not up to Klaus von whoever to tell you you don't need that, and we'll tell you what you're going to have and what you're not going to have. More towards the latter.
Yeah. Yeah. What will be blamed for the dollar destruction? Will it be this current COVID situation, or there's also talks out there about some type of cyber attack, and of course the hacking of the Treasury and a couple of governmental agencies? So is that setting us up for some type of false flag event or some type of unexpected surprise, supposedly?
Well, I would think while Trump was in office, he had no interest in destroying the dollar. And remember, whatever damage that that is done to the dollar through money printing, negative interest rates, stimulus, all that stuff, it's all relative to other fiat currencies. And if other countries are doing it and the dollar is a reserve currency, the dollar's position is strong vis-a-vis those other currencies. So the only way the dollar goes down is if the United States agrees with all the other countries that not only does the dollar have to go down, but the euro, the yen, all these currencies have to go and they have to do one currency.
Yeah.
That's the destruction of the dollar. Otherwise, the dollar, as bad as you think it is, and you can list all the things that make it a flawed currency, it's relative to the other currencies, and all the other currencies borrow and spend in dollars, and they've got massive debt and they have negative interest rates. So the dollar's in no worse, but is in better position than the euro, the yen, all the other currencies that are out there. So I don't think they need an excuse to knock the dollar down. The way they'll knock the dollar down is if, with the United States consent, they all agree to knock the dollar and all the other currencies down in favor of either an SDR style thing where they all, but that would still require the dollar to exist.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure that the dollar is the linchpin of all the reset. I think that they could still go with the dollar because the dollar isn't an impediment right now to everything they want to do. As long as they have friendlies at the Fed, it'll just keep funding and printing.
Yeah. Now, what about the rebranding of the dollar with utilizing technology in the blockchain and their so-called central bank digital currency?
Right.
And at what point will that be rolled out? And do you think? And will we also have the paper access still until a certain point to where they remove the whole cashless push, removing
Yeah.
coins and cash out of circulation?
Well, the reason they want to go digital is it allows them to go negative, and it eliminates your ability to save money because they can track and trace it. They can, once you go digital, you can put time limits like this money is only good until the next 8 weeks. So if you don't spend it, it loses money. That's in a sense enforce negative interest rates. All the country's central bank have a definite interest in going to the digital currency so they know where it is, they can track it. There's no way of getting around. You can't money launder. They want to eliminate cash. But the one reason they're not going to eliminate cash, there's two reasons. They're both self-interested. As much as central banks want digital currencies for all the reasons I just mentioned, so they can track, trace, allocate, self-deal it themselves, is if there's an issue. So, for example, Sweden's already noted this, and they're way ahead on the cashless society. They believe in that. They realize, like, let's say Russia invaded them, that the only way they could finance any type of resistance would be through cash. So they'd have to keep some cash. Look
Mm-hmm.
at the United States. What did the United States do when it wanted to pay off Iran? Pallets of cash.
Mm-hmm.
CIA, if it wants to fund foment revolution around the world, it needs cash. So they probably don't want to get rid of cash that is issued by themselves. They want some certificate that would represent their digital currency as well. So I don't think they'll get rid of it totally. What they could do is get rid of it to the point where the average person in day-to-day commerce doesn't use it or can't use it in amounts over $100, a
Right.
certain amount. They already have those kind of rules in place. And in fact, if you're traveling and you have like $5,000 in cash, there's a lot of states that will confiscate that money. And the presumption is you're up to no good with that money.
Yeah.
You either acquired it through a drug deal or you're going to go buy drugs with it. And you have to prove to them that, no, that's not what I'm doing. There's been cases where people are going to go buy a car and they had cash. They get pulled over and the cops confiscate the cash. So I don't think they want to eliminate cash, but they definitely want to curtail its use and bring it down into the low single digit percentages of transactions and institute their own currency.
Yeah, I want to actually put some on the screen for a second for those that are paying attention because I want to get your thoughts on the current price valuations of or the paper, the amount of paper in circulation in comparison to the amount of reported gold as well as silver. So I actually have on the screen here. Let me go get it up here. I have the U.S. debt clock, and so according to the most recent updates, and I just got somebody brought it to my attention the other day. It says the paper to gold ratio now it's $33,902 per ounce. And so, and for silver, let me see, silver to paper ratio is it's 4,442 per ounce. And so, when it comes to precious metals, a lot of people here are metal enthusiasts.
Mhm.
At what point do you see the metals, surpassing their all-time highs significantly? Will it come about in this upcoming year, or will it take a couple more years to actually come to fruition because we got a lot more easing and stimulating to do?
Well, one of the things about cash, do you realize that there's not even physical cash, which is not backed by anything?
Mm-hmm.
There's not even, I think there's 15 to 20 times or 100 times, some ridiculous amount more dollars in circulation than there is actual cash to back those. I think there's only like $1 billion worth of cash in the world
Mm-hmm.
of US dollars. If you think about that, they're on a fractional reserve basis, even with respect to the amount of cash, physical cash that there is. So I don't look at the price of gold and silver based on the money supply that's out there, because it hasn't really been in the last 30 or 40 years a good indicator of the prices of gold and silver.
Mm-hmm.
What drives gold and silver is investor sentiment in wanting to preserve wealth against the dollar, but it's not so neat of it. It hasn't been as a ratio between dollars and gold. And part of the reason for that is they've done such a job in convincing and just ignoring gold that it has nothing to do with the monetary system, even though they hold it reserve assets, but they never make that connection. And I think that connection isn't brought into the pricing, and then you bring in the manipulation of the prices of gold and silver, and it's distorted. And you also have to take into account that most of the big money is run by funds that are all, again, they're part of the club. They invest in stocks. I mean, how else can you explain the valuation of Tesla and some of these other companies that don't make any money? They've redefined value, or haven't redefined value, but they've redefined value for investors. Because if gold was still considered a competing currency with the dollar, and then in the last 10, 15 years, then the price of gold would have gone up correspondingly 10 to 20 fold versus the dollar, which it hasn't. Silver is a different story because silver has already been more demonetized than gold. That process began in 1876, and there's no tie at all to central banks or the monetary system to silver. Silver has a great shot of rising to its all-time high on the basis of its commodity value, just like we saw palladium's been the big winner, and palladium has no monetary value. And silver could do very well as a commodity based on all this Green New Deal. You know, if the government mandates you got to have this, that, solar, whatever it is, batteries, there'll be a demand for silver. So I don't look at the debt clock and say, I think a lot of people get false hope. They say, well, this has to happen. There's more dollars in circulation. That makes gold worth more. Well, it does, but it also makes every other asset worth more. That's why the stock market goes high. And also because the central banks invest in the stock market far more than they invest in gold. And certainly they don't invest in silver. So I think gold and silver will hit, this is not investment advice, will hit all-time highs. Gold already has, and especially in different currencies. Silver will get there, but they're not going to be the highest performing assets until there is some type of hyperinflation, which I don't see happening, at least in the traditional price set. I don't mean it. Okay, so inflation you can define as enhancement of the money, increasing the money supply. Clearly, we have that. We have increased inflation in asset prices, but unless we have the situation where the average person has to literally, well, they don't have it anymore, wheel cash in to buy some groceries, that's when gold and silver will really take off. But I think that's not going to happen because we don't have that demand. Remember, the demand we have now is artificial demand, because if people aren't working, then they're not producing and they can only buy what the government gives them. That kind of holds inflation down.
Yeah.
Even though you say, well, they're handing out money. They are, but that's only replacing, not even replacing the money and the goods and services that would have been made and would have been spent if the economy was actually working.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not concerned about, or I don't think I'm concerned about, but I don't think that worrying about price inflation is the biggest deal. I worry about there even being an active economy when they think they can just shut everything down and pay people to stay home.
Yeah.
And watch Netflix and buy stuff on Amazon.
So
That's not really inflationary.
Yeah. What do you think? So under this possible Biden
It's
administration,
bad, but it's not inflationary.
Yes. So under a possible Biden administration, because he hinted at a couple weeks ago, then he backed away from it about, actually having a full-fledged nationwide shutdown somehow, some way. Could that be literally the catalyst to where it crumbles our economy, and then all of a sudden we see those all-time highs and currency looking for a safe place to hide?
No, I don't. I actually think silver and gold do better. Think about a golden age. When people have a lot of money, they buy gold. More so when you're impoverished, that's when you can't buy gold. That's when you certainly can't buy silver. If you're not producing economic output, then you don't need silver for solar panels. You don't need silver for industrial applications, which is 70% of the demand is silver. And you certainly don't need silverware, which is another 15%, or silver jewelry.
Yeah.
There's very little investment demand in silver, and investment demand goes down when people don't have any money. So gold, yes, people will want, but only rich people can afford gold. And I don't think a collapsed economy makes gold and silver worth more. I think it clearly hurts silver more than gold, but it means it's actually deflation. To shut an economy down is inflationary.
Yeah.
Deflationary, clearly deflationary, because there's not more goods and services. The only thing is there's fewer goods and services being produced, but no one has any money to buy them anyway. So it's offset. And you're certainly not going to spend Only rich people can spend their stimulus check if they give it to everybody to go out and buy gold with it.
Yeah. So basically, in an event like that, in a deflationary event like that, we can see gold and silver price probably tank a little bit, similar to what happened in March, huh?
I don't see how it's a stimulus for gold. It's not a stimulus for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, if you think about what they're saying, we're going to shut the economy down. The only thing that's good for is the pockets of the economy that they leave open, like grocery stores and online ordering. Everyone else gets totally hosed.
Yeah.
So who's going to invest? Invest with what money?
Good point. Good point. Now watch this. So we're in a digital revolution right now. So I would imagine the conversation would be a lot different if there wasn't the invention and the promotion of Bitcoin and all those blockchain crypto type currencies. So if, for example, if there was no digital revolution utilizing those alternatives, do you think gold and silver at this current moment, given what we've experienced, would be a lot higher than what it is now in price wise, or no?
Yes, and horses would be more valuable if they hadn't invented the car. Um, clearly, gold and silver historically have been the alternative asset. They are the place to go when the money goes bad. There's no doubt about that. But now younger people go to digital currencies. People concerned about inflation, people concerned about money printing, people concerned about having to leave their country because of whatever reason, capital controls. They're going to buy a cryptocurrency more than they're going to buy gold or silver because you don't have to lug it across the border. And also because it's more liquid. I mean, in order to buy or sell gold or silver, you either have to be involved with the COMEX futures trading, which that's probably not a good idea to put your money there and think that it's secure, that your contract's going to be paid out on, or you have to go to a local coin shop, or you have to have it stored somewhere, and then you have to call the vault and have them send it to where the buyer's going to be. It's not that easy. And that was worth the trouble when there wasn't an alternative. But if there's an alternative, that's what people go to. Now, the difference is the gold and silver, I mean, silver lost 50, 60%, but gold doesn't generally lose that much and generally holds over time and grows versus fiat currencies. But the cryptocurrencies, at least Bitcoin, I mean, right now it's near an all-time high. So I would say anybody who's ever bought it has not lost any money. Now, they may have lost money if they sold during the periods, but I absolutely agree that if it wasn't for cryptocurrencies, there would be more money going into the metals. But that's a function of technology and it's just natural that people would gravitate towards, people always go, that's why the car came about. Think about it. People always go for the faster alternative, even if it's more dangerous. So there's more risk involved in cryptocurrencies. They can go up, they can go down, but it's faster. And people choose, cars are more dangerous than horses. No two ways about it. But you sacrifice safety for speed. Yeah. People just generally do that.
Interesting. Now, as we get ready to wind down a little bit, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what are you predicting for, or what do you foresee 2021 on a political, social, on the global economy scale, or anything of that nature? What are you looking forward to, or what do you see coming in 2021? Just worth keeping an eye on.
There's two things that can happen. One, Trump either somehow gets a Hail Mary and he gets legislature or courts to hear him when it becomes obvious. He gets a hearing on the fraud and he wins, and the electoral vote goes for him. In which case, I think that's probably the best case for the economy. I think there'll be some social unrest for a couple of months, but then it would go away. The second alternative, Trump decides he's had it. He's not going to allow this. He put an executive order in place and he rounds up everybody. And then we're locked down through martial, not because of COVID, but because of martial law. We don't know how that's not good for the economy. The third alternative is Biden gets in, whether he stays or whether Kamala Harris comes as president, you have a whole new type of economic policy, similar in nature in that you use the government to boost it, but it probably spend it more, forgive more debt. And I think in that case, you may debase the dollar enough that you might have that hyperinflation. And if they are trying to create an economy to just entirely through government fiscal and monetary spending, meaning the government spends it and the Fed spends it, then gold and silver would rise. So unfortunately, if you're in favor of gold and silver, you want Biden and Harris to win. And I don't think that's, I wouldn't want that to happen just so that your gold or silver can go up.
Right.
Although there were a lot of people, they were always cheering on like 10, 15 years ago, China this and China that. They're going to crush the dollar and the gold's going to go higher. Gold back you on, game changer. I never understood that. It's like, you like China so much, you think they're wonderful because they like gold. Go live there and get your social credit score.
I think that social credit score is coming here anyway. Under Biden
exactly, exactly. Without the rise in the gold price,
it's on the way. So I'm curious to get your thoughts about Operation Warp Speed and this whole hysteria over the vaccines and stuff like that. Clearly that's part of the globalist agenda, leading us to this great reset that they have in mind for us. What are your thoughts on that, man? Like clearly it's very concerning on my part because a lot of people right now are not for the vaccination process, but eventually it's going to be weeded into everything we do to where you can't do anything unless you have your certifications. And is there any way escaping that stuff, man?
Well, that really bothers me because why COVID? COVID is not the most virulent disease the planet has faced. I mean, it sets the precedent. Then why not AIDS? Why not gonorrhea? Why not syphilis? Why not hepatitis? Why not a billion? Why not have a passport? Because it's not like if you're free of COVID that you can't walk into a restaurant or an airplane and infect people with something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to give them any ideas that you should have all these things, but the idea that they're using COVID seems very suspect. And also, I'm not against vaccinations if the person consents to it and they've done their research or they've listened to somebody tell them it's okay to take it. But to vaccinate the planet, which is what they keep saying, to eliminate something, it's probably, what happens with these viruses, they go away or they mutate. What's the point? Because then you're just going to have to keep updating the dose. And clearly someone's going to make a lot of money from this, even though they're going to give it to you for free. They're not going to make it for free and they're going to get paid for it. So I'm suspicious of the whole thing. I don't think it was a big achievement to have done a vaccine in 6 months because most of these trials go on because they want to see what happens to somebody a year, 2, 3, 4 years later. They want to see what happens to pregnant women who may become pregnant later. They want to see they don't know. To pat yourself on the shoulder and say, well, you got this done faster than ever before, when it probably wasn't even necessary. I mean, if you're going to spend all that time and money, maybe cure cancer, do something.
Yeah.
The COVID thing, it just seems a little too artificial for my taste. And to force a vaccine and okay, so maybe it works, but if you're concerned, you don't need to. You get the vaccine yourself, and then if someone else doesn't want to take it, why should they have to take it?
Yeah, I agree, man. And so 2021 will be a year like no other because we're going to be introduced to all types of new ways of government trying to make us keep us safe, as they'll probably like to say. So we will see, man. But that the side effects for all this vaccine stuff is
we don't know.
It's going to be something else.
And for what risk? I mean, it's a risk reward ratio.
Yeah.
For most people under 60, under 70, whatever the age limit is, it's not going to bother them that much anyway. There's probably other things that probably you got to be concerned about, diseases. To vaccinate everybody for that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially on a mandatory basis.
Yeah, and that's where
because they're using it as a precondition so that you can get back to normal, which is basically a precondition to be able to say to you, we have to give you permission to do what you want to do. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go anywhere because we don't want you to go anywhere unless we can track you. Now, from what I understand, what I heard on the radio, when you get the vaccination, they have to record that you have it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's kind of clever there. They're not trying to say who hasn't had it. Well, they are, because all you have to do at your database is look at who's had it and how you know who hasn't had it.
Right.
So they are keeping a list who doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And they can stop you at airports. They can stop you at wherever and say you haven't had it. You can't go here.
Yeah. And so initially they're going to have a paper card or something like that. Then they're going to give you some type of digital something or another. So
and then you get the chip, and it's
yeah. It's only going to get worse, man. That's for sure. It's only going to get worse at a much faster
if you
rate.
think about it, Mike, these are types of okay, if Trump were to do what we say he might do with the executive order, that would be an emergency. And that's the only time you would ever do something like that. Well, the only time you would ever do this type of chipping people and vaccinating everybody and where's your papers, I would think would be something like Ebola, where if you touch it, you're done. I don't know I'm not a virologist, an epidemiologist, but from what I've seen with COVID, it's not at the point where you got it and you're a goner.
Yeah.
And we have to protect the population.
Right.
It's through these drastic. This is a I mean, shutting the economy down also is a dramatically drastic measure, and it's not necessary for the economy. It's necessary for them to institute the control. There could be no other explanation for it. But they've convinced people that it's a good thing for them, and the people can be convinced if they getting paid.
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, okay,
or promise something. Because I'm wondering, like, you know, so here in Michigan, Governor Whitmer, you know, by her being very aggressive with her measurements here, I'm wondering, like, you know, your family's impacted, of course, even though you guys are in the know as to what's really going on. But, you know, you're ruining your state as well, and your family members here and things like that. So all for what? Like, you know, have you bought in or been promised something? Like, come on now. Like, I just don't understand how people are willing to sell their soul, perhaps, for this agenda. And what have they been promised that's worth the destruction that you're causing families?
Right.
And
well, for some of them, maybe they just like being the guy or the gal in charge.
yeah.
They get a kick out of that. Ha ha! I can shut you down. You know.
It's evil at its highest form, man.
It seems. I mean, it seems to be. It's interesting. I am seeing in a lot of which I hadn't seen in the last ever really. You see in the pro-Trump, anti-vaccination, so many sites of scripture, which you never saw before. Openly, very pro-Christian messages.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen that before. And Kelly McEnany, Jenna Ellis, Lynn Wood, all of them, they had, and Trump holding the Bible up in front of the church there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's. I don't know if they're using. I don't think they are. I just think that there seems to be an increased interest now in Christianity just the last year or two, because this all does smack of, you know, Revelation, Mark of the Beast, and so on. You don't have to be looking for it. It kind of is there because the Mark of the Beast basically says you can't do anything unless you get it, the mark.
Yeah.
And now they're saying you can't go anywhere unless you get the vaccine. You know, the mask of the beast. You have to wear the mask.
Well, Louis Commersano, man, I appreciate you for taking time and joining us here, sharing your thoughts and whatnot, and answering some questions from the community. So you're no longer active on YouTube, you said. So you're everywhere. Where can people find out more from you from?
I'm on Twitter, but I'm not going to be on Twitter much longer. I don't believe in supporting YouTube and Twitter and these channels because they're just censoring, and it's outrageous what they do. So I don't want to support them by even having people visit them. And I don't want to put my content there. So I dropped off of YouTube a year and a half ago. I'm on Rumble. I'm on BitChute. I'm on Parler. I'm on Gab and Library. And of course, Smaulgd.com. And basically, I've stopped writing and doing a lot of charts. I don't have as much time as I used to. So I do my own updates, mostly not even video, but just audio type updates. And I do 1 or 2 a week, and they're all on Smaulgd.com. They're all on BitChute. And I just opened up a Rumble and Library account as well, because you never know. BitChute could get shut down. All of them can get shut down. So hedge your bets.
If you're on the internet, you can get shut down. So
yeah, I'd like YouTube to get shut down, but we'll say that could be part of the executive order if they're found to have been dealing with China. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, hey, everybody, I appreciate you guys for hanging out with us on this live stream and sharing your thoughts in the comments, as well as hanging out in the community as well. So, Louis, we will definitely stay up, man. I would definitely look to have you back on in 2021, and we'll get a chance to assess where we're at then and, you know, get your thoughts on it at that time, man. So I appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks, everyone.